Alrighty, it's that time again. Thanks everyone for joining us here for another WordPress.com webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on how to create compelling home pages. I'm going to just take a few minutes here just to let folks file into the room in case anyone else needs to join the webinar before we get started here. But let me introduce myself. I'm Jerry, and I'm a WordPress.com happiness engineer. I live near Seattle, Washington, which I've already shared in the chat. And I see we've got people coming into this session from all over the world, as far away as Egypt, which is a place I would love to visit. Lots of folks here from the UK and from Ireland, from all over the place here in the US. Cape Town, South Africa. That's awesome. Great to have you here. Anyway, back to me. I'm Jerry, and I'm a happiness engineer, and I help with WordPress.com questions daily in our support forums, which is where we help people who have free sites which don't have an upgrade on them. So if you have a free site on WordPress.com, there's a very good chance that I might have been the person that helped you. And also, in addition to helping folks with their sites every day, which I really love, I also enjoy conducting these webinars. So I'm really glad to have you folks here with us today. Looks like the room's starting to fill up a little bit. One or two orders of business before we get started here. The first thing is you'll see in your Zoom interface, if you scroll down or look down at the bottom of your Zoom interface, you'll see that you'll have a Q&A option. The way this webinar is going to work is that I'm going to do a live demo presentation for everyone here today. And then at the end after that, we're going to take questions during Q&A. You're welcome to drop your question into the Q&A option in Zoom at any time. You can go ahead and do that now if you like, or after the presentation is over. I do have a couple of colleagues here with me today who are going to be helping to answer questions via text. So they're going to help grab anything that I'm not going to be able to demonstrate live during Q&A. And we'll just try and get as many questions as we can answered here, either until we run out of questions or until we hit the top of the hour. Also, there's a chat interface in Zoom too. I see a lot of you here in the chat talking with us. Just a quick note: we don't take questions in Q&A. I mean, you can leave a question in Q&A, but once we get rolling and once we get started with the actual Q&A, it's really hard for me to keep track of like two different windows at the same time. So if you have a question, specifically a question either about your site or about something that came up here during the webinar, go ahead and drop that into the Q&A. And you can use the chat for chatting amongst yourselves, or if you're having a technical issue and you're not hearing the audio or the video or something like that, go ahead and let us know in chat as well, and we'll take a look at that. But again, if you have a question, drop that into the Q&A tab that's at the bottom of your Zoom interface. Let's see, what else? I'm going to switch here to the slide deck, just so we have to look at the timer for the rest of our time here. The other thing that I wanted to mention here before we get started is that I know that some of you are coming to this session with a WordPress site that you have set up with another hosting provider like GoDaddy or Bluehost, HostGator, A2. There's really a ton of hosts out there that offer the ability to install WordPress. I did want to mention that this webinar applies specifically to sites that are hosted on WordPress.com, which is our managed hosting service where all we do is host WordPress sites, basically. And there are some slight platform differences. The good news is that everything you see here in this webinar is going to apply to you, with the exception of one block that we add, where there isn't really an equivalent. It's a WordPress.com only block. And when we get to that point, I will mention it to you, so you'll have an alternative you can use instead. But otherwise, everything you see here in the webinar is going to apply to you today. One thing I'll mention is that we use a custom dashboard interface on WordPress.com. It's a little cleaner. It's a little bit more like a web app, so it refreshes without having to reload the page. It's just a little bit smoother and easier to use. That's not something you have on WordPress sites with other providers, but you can if you add the Jetpack plugin for WordPress. And to explain what that is, Jetpack is a plugin that we create that basically takes all of the things that we pre-install on WordPress.com and puts it into a single plugin that you can then add to your own WordPress site, which gives you the same functionality that WordPress.com users enjoy just as soon as they start their site. So you can find that at jetpack.com and download that plugin. It's free, and then install it on your site. And you'll see basically the exact same interface you'll see here. But even without the Jetpack plugin, you'll notice that Really, although the look is a little different, the menu options and things are really in the same places. So it's not too different. I just wanted to point that out before we get started. Let's see here. I don't think that I have any more business that I want to take care of here today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's dive into our webinar here. Compelling home pages, how to create a custom layout with the WordPress block editor. So first of all, let's go ahead and let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about what is the purpose of a home page, which is maybe something you haven't thought of. It really serves as the entry point to the other important areas of your site. And a really good way to think of this is like the front page of a newspaper. The newspaper, if you look at it inside of a newspaper rack or a machine, if anyone buys newspapers these days, which is becoming increasingly uncommon, you know that you can't fit all of the news on the front page of a newspaper. But it's the point of entry to the rest of the news that's inside of the newspaper. And that's exactly how a homepage should function. It's really not where you have to hit people with all of your information, but really it's where people enter your site and then go to the other parts of your site. Another purpose of the homepage, of course, is to showcase who you are and your brand, what you do. This is your chance to make a strong first impression with your visitors. And of course, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Which is why the homepage is considered to be so important. But it really is a great place to showcase the high points of who you are and what you do and what you want to show people when they're arriving to your site for the first time. And also because a single page can't contain every bit of information, like I said with my newspaper analogy, this is really more where you pique visitors' curiosity and you draw them deeper. You really want to encourage people to get off of your homepage and actually dig into the other parts of your site and explore your site and see what you have there. But by far the most important purpose of a homepage, and this is above all other things, is you want your homepage to actually move visitors towards your goal, whatever the goal is for your site. If you have an e-commerce site, that's pretty easy. Your goal is to get people to purchase things from you. If you're a blogger, for example, your goal might be a little more hard to define. Like you probably want to encourage subscriptions and followers and get people to come back and read your content over and over again. So homepage is really important for moving people towards what you see as the goal for your site. So let's talk about the goal for your homepage, which is actually a little different than the goal for your site. And it's probably not something you've really thought about. What should be the goal for the homepage? First, it should be realistic and incremental. A homepage is not really a place to go for the hard sell, to use a salesman terminology. And it's not really realistic to expect someone to land on your homepage and immediately take the action that you want them to take on the site. So you want more of an incremental thing, something that, for example, if we're using an e-commerce site, you're not going to get someone to purchase anything from you on the homepage. But an incremental step that they could take would be to go to your shop page and see the items that you're offering on your site, which gets them one step closer to actually making that purchase. So really the purpose of your homepage and your goal for your homepage is to determine where do you want your visitor to go next, because ultimately they're not going to take that action on the homepage. The homepage, it's not the purpose of that. It's really more to get them to go to some other part of your site where you have a little bit more space, a little bit more ability to sell more effectively or draw people in more effectively. Also, it's definitely something where you want to realize that you have probably more than one goal. People who come to your site for the first time, they probably have more than one goal. Some people might be ready to do business with you right away. Some people might be interested in reading articles from your blog. Some people might want to take a little time to sort of get to know you and understand you a little bit better. So you want to define what goals you think that people will have when they're coming to your site, but you want to make sure that you prioritize for yourself what is the primary goal, what is the secondary goal. So like I said, an example, of course, is to encourage visitors to go to the shop or services page on your site. You're not going to be able to get them to make a purchase on the homepage typically. So this is definitely a great goal for a homepage. And if you have a blog and you're trying to build traffic, say you're trying to build traffic so you can make money from advertising, then an excellent goal for a homepage would be to encourage subscriptions or encourage followers. Maybe show the best content that you have on your site, show some featured blog posts, or really get people hooked on what you've got going on your blog. So let's talk a little bit about the demo that we're going to build today, which is a retail store. It's a sample retail store. It doesn't exist in reality, of course, called Main Street Camera. And we have a primary goal for this homepage. We sell cameras. And so what we'd like to do is we'd like to have visitors, when they land on the homepage, look at our cameras. That's our primary goal. If we can get them to do nothing else, that's exactly what we'd like them to do. But again, not everyone's ready to shop. Not everyone's ready to buy. Sometimes it might take a little bit of extra time for them to make that decision. So we have some secondary goals for this homepage as well. We're offering workshops, and we'd love to get people to sign up for those. Not only do they provide us with a little bit of income for the business, but they also lead to more dedicated followers as well, people who are probably going to come back and do business with us again. Also, we want folks to learn about us because we think we have a really good story here at this business, and we'd like to share with people a little bit about who we are and what the mission of our business is. And so that's a great secondary goal to have for folks who aren't ready to start shopping or taking action right away. And the other goal that we have for this site is to encourage visitors to subscribe to updates. We have a good blog on this site that we use for our marketing and also for search engine optimization purposes. And we'd love to get people to sign up and get updates in their inbox and keep coming back. So eventually they might turn into a customer, for example. And knowing what's primary, what's secondary, what other things you might want to include, these really help determine the hierarchy of your homepage, the order of it, what things come first, what comes after, that sort of thing. So no better way to do this but to look at an example. So let's go ahead and let's take a tour of the homepage that we're going to build together. And I have that here in another tab so you can see it just ready to go. First off, you can see that we've got our logo and our branding up top in the header. And of course, this is provided by our theme. So we're not really going to set this up. What we're going to do is we're going to set up all the things that come after. So right after that is what we call a call to action area. This is dedicated towards our primary goal here. And you can see it has kind of a neat little scrolling effect too. So it adds just a little bit of interactivity as you're scrolling through the page. And uses a really compelling image that we hope is going to draw people in and make people want to kind of scroll and check out the site and things like that. Down below that, we have this area here, which is for our secondary calls to action. As I mentioned previously, two of our secondary calls to action are encourage signups for our workshops and encourage people to learn more about us. Also, it's not a bad idea to take your primary goal and restate it again a second time. For anyone who happens to skip over the big, beautiful photo that you see at the very start of the page, they might actually take the time to read this and be interested this way as well. Sometimes it's a nice way to restate your primary goal with different language and a different approach, which might work for more people. So it's totally okay to repeat that again, which is what we've done here. Below that, we have an area here of our blog posts. These are just recent posts from our blog. But we could, if we wanted to, set up this block to just show featured blog posts, which we add a category to, like the category of featured, for example, which would just pluck those out and just show those on our homepage. And then below that, we have, after we've shown the blog posts and given people maybe a reason to subscribe to us, we want to make sure to capture that attention and give them the option to subscribe right away. And add their email address. And the nice thing about that too is, if you're using a marketing platform like MailChimp or something like that, you would be able to download those emails and enter them into your marketing platform as well. Okay, so this is our homepage. Let's go ahead and let's get back here to the slide deck for a second, because before we get any further, I want to talk a little bit about what do you see and what makes an effective homepage. It's not just enough to have a homepage, but you want to make sure that you optimize it so that it's effective. The first thing you want to do is you want to focus on the area above the fold. This is an old newspaper term, and I used newspaper as an analogy earlier. But if you grab a newspaper, before you open it up and unfold it, all that first part at the top of the newspaper is the area above the fold. It's the part that loads. It's the first thing that people see before they even start scrolling. So it is the the most effective area to use for your primary goal for your site, which we've done with the call to action on our demo site. Another thing that I think effective homepages have is they have eye-catching visuals or compelling images. You know, as humans, we're all very visual. We like to respond to images and graphics. And no place is this more important than the homepage. If you've ever been to a homepage which is dominated with a lot of text and not very many images, you know that doesn't really draw you in as much as a page that has a lot of images. It doesn't even need a lot of text because the images are the thing that draw you in. So I think that it's very important for an effective homepage to have these. Also, you want to have text that's brief and easy to read, and you want to keep the layout pretty uncrowded. The homepage is no place to hit anyone with you know, with a whole bunch of text and images. This is no place to put the kitchen sink. This is really someplace where restraint is much more the way to go here. And it makes for a better and more effective homepage. And also, because the homepage is minimal, you know, this gives you the opportunity to guide visitors to the necessary information that they need. Rather than trying to include every bit of information on your homepage, the point here is more to add teasers and add prompts and draw people in and get people going to the other pages of your site. So an effective homepage, of course, is going to guide people to the information that they need because they're not going to find everything they need on the homepage. It's more like a top-level menu of all the options for the site. Okay, so let's get to building. So let's go to our site and let's start building this homepage. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to start out with our primary call to action, and we're going to use the cover block, the heading block, the paragraph block, and the button block to do this. So to start off, here I am in the pages section of my dashboard. This is under pages and all pages. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click on add new. I'm going to start adding a new page. And this takes a second to load because I'm running a webinar right now, so I'm sharing an awful lot of information over the internet. But you can see here, before you even start the page, you have the option to add a predefined layout, and we have a bunch of things to get you started. One cool thing is that one of the items here is home pages. So if you look through here, you can see that there's a bunch of different predefined homepage options that you can choose to put on your site. You can even scroll over them and kind of see what they have. We are going to skip this option and we're going to choose blank page as our option because we're going to build this one from scratch. Just so you can see how it comes together and understand a little bit better about how things work with blocks inside of the editor. But just know that you can always do a little bit of a shortcut by looking through the predefined designs and choosing something like that, either as a starting point for more customization or just as something you can replace with your own text and images and just get going without too much effort. Okay, so we're going to add a title to this, and I'm just going to call this my demo homepage. And I don't actually want this title to show on the homepage. The homepage is probably one of the few pages on your site where you don't really need a title because everyone knows that they're the homepage for the most part. So we're going to click on the template section here on the right, and we're going to change this from our default template to the page without title template. So basically this template is going to load all the content that we add into the editor, but it's going to skip this title. It's not going to show that at all. Okay, from here, we're going to add our cover block, and I'm going to click on the plus sign here to do that. And I'm just going to search for it because I know what it is. So I'm going to type in cover, and then there's the block for us. And once I click on that, we've got a couple of options here that we're presented with. You could set a background color for this if you like. What we're going to do is we're going to select an image. And we have images that are in our media library already that we're going to just use to make things a little bit easier. But you can always upload your image if you have it on your computer, or upload from Google Photos if you happen to have a Google Photos account. We also have free options here for Pexels, Free Photos, and Openverse, which is a great option for finding free photography that has no copyright that you're okay to use. In fact, fun fact, all the images for this homepage, they come from these free photo options. I'm just actually preloading them into the media library to save us a little time. But this entire page is built with free photos. So back to the media library, we're going to go ahead and select the image that we've chosen for this and then insert it. And as soon as you insert it, you can see that basically it's just provided us with a block with an image as the background and then an area where we can start writing text. Before we get into writing the text, let's change just a few things first. I'm going to click on the block to get to its block settings. And then here at the top, I'm going to actually change the width. We could go for what's called max width. This is defined by the theme as a width that's like big, but not full width, let's say. In this case, I'd actually like to have a lot of impact for this, so I'm going to choose the full width option. Another thing worth pointing out here is there's settings for this block on the sidebar. You can see here that we have a focal point picker. So if you wanted to, you could actually choose the area of the image that you would like to display. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to choose the fixed background option instead. This uses the whole image, but it scrolls with the image. So that's the effect that we had on our homepage, where you could see the scrolling of the background taking place. We're also going to change our overlay. It's black by default, but I'd like it to be white. And the purpose of the overlay here is to make sure that the text in the images or any of the content you're adding here in the layout is going to show up correctly. So this provides a little bit extra contrast so that the words stand out a little bit better. And that's all I'm going to do here for the settings for that block. Let's go ahead and write our title. And for that, what I'm going to do is I actually have some text here off screen that I'm just going to copy and paste in here to save myself a little bit of time. And you can see when it comes in, it's really quite small. So what we'd like to do first off is just make this a bit larger. And that actually isn't even going to be large enough with the preset options. So let's choose 90 pixels, which is nice and big, really captures people's attention. Another thing, this font looks a little plain. So what I'd like to do is change that. In the typography options under this triple dot menu, you can see I have an option for font families. So let's go ahead and enable that. And then this allows me to set a font. I'm going to set this font here called EB Garamond, which is really close to the font that we use for the logo for our business. Okay, that's looking good. So I'm going to drop my cursor here at the end of this line and just hit my return key on the keyboard. And you can see it's dropped down to a new line and given me the option to add another block. And that's the really cool thing about the cover block is it's not just a place to stash a single line of text. You can actually build a miniature layout inside of this block with a photographic background. We're going to use it for a call to action, but you could use this for other sections on your homepage pretty easily as well. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and also grab the text that I have prepared. So let me copy that and paste it in here. And you can see it's really small and off to one side. So first, let's go ahead and center it. There we go. And then also, let's go ahead and let's make it a little bigger. This is medium. It's not big enough. Large is way too big. Let's go ahead and let's set a custom size for that. Let's say 30 pixels. Let's say 25 pixels. I like that a little bit better. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here, again, I'm going to drop my cursor at the end of this line, and I'm going to hit my return key, which automatically offers us the option to add a new block. You can see here, we didn't have that plus sign that we had before, and it doesn't always show up depending on where you are in the layout. So instead, if you want to add a block, what you can do is go to this plus sign up here at the top. And this insert is the block inserter sidebar. And from here, what we're going to do is we're going to search for the button block. There it is. And that adds a button to our page. And let me go ahead and collapse this sidebar so we have a little more room here. So this adds a button to the page, but again, it's by default, it's off to one side. It's left aligned. So let's go ahead and let's center that. And then also I have a little bit of text that I'm going to use for this as well. So let's go ahead and paste that in. Oops, it's not, my paster is not working. So here's live TV in action. Let me see. I think I'm just going to type this one out. My cursor's giving me fits. See our cameras. Okay, and then the last thing that we need to do here is we need to click on this block so we have the floating toolbar enabled. It's still enabled because I was just typing in it. And I'm going to add a link. In this case, I've already set up an about page. It's already existing on my site, so I can just search for it by the title. Oh, not about page. I'm sorry. I want to go to the cameras page. I'm thinking about a section further down here. Okay, so now what we've done is we've taken this and we've linked this to our camera page. Another thing I think I'd like to do is let's go ahead and let's click on the cover block that's containing all of this element. And let's just drag the bottom here and let's make this just a little bit bigger so we can see the camera a little bit better, because we really would like to have this show up full and in everyone's face as soon as they land on the home page. Okay, and that's how you create your primary call to action for our homepage. So next up, what we're going to do is we're going to create the secondary call to action section. And to do that, we're going to use the columns block, the image block, the heading block, and the paragraph block. And we're going to use each of those blocks within columns. So we're going to create the 3-column layout that we showed earlier. So back on our page again, I'm just going to scroll down a bit here to this blank white area. And I'm just going to click in there, which is just going to get us outside of the cover block, so we can start adding more layout to the white page area instead of adding blocks inside of the cover block as we were doing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little spacer. And what this does, as you would expect, is it provides a little bit of space in your layout. So we're going to change this a bit. We'd like to make this a little bit shorter. Let's go 50 pixels. And let's, oh, I see. Sandra's mentioning this in the chat, that it's a little awkward to have these 2 words on one line here. I should mention before we get any further that this is actually not always like that. If it's on a tablet, for example, the text would be much more better balanced. If it was on mobile, it would be even tighter. The reason why it's so wide here is because of a really large display. But if my window was smaller that I was working in, and most people who visit your site are going to see this smaller as well, then this will actually tighten that up a bit. Okay, back to where we were. We've added our spacer block. Let's go ahead and add our columns block. I'm just going to search. I don't even have to type the full word. I just type columns and it pops up. Let's scroll down so we can see this a little bit better. And you can see that when we add the columns block, we have a couple different options to get us started. I'm going to choose the 3-column layout and have those be equal size. Straight away, I can tell that this is a little bit more narrow than I'd like it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm inside of one of the columns. I'm ready to add text to this column. I'd like to actually click back up to what's called the parent block, the column block that contains all of the columns. So once I do that, I can just go ahead and I can choose a different option. I'm going to choose the wide width option. I don't need this to go all the way to the edges of the page. That might be just a bit much. I really want the focus to be on our primary call to action. So this seems like a good width to start with as a compromise. And then once I'm here, I'm going to click on my column and I'm going to go ahead and add my first block, which is going to be an image block. And from here, I'm going to select an image, again, from my media library. Let's pick out this one right here. And the nice thing about adding images to the media library in advance is that it allows you to get everything set up first. So I've added all the information I want for these. I've added alt text for SEO purposes and for anyone who's sight impaired and can't see the images, they'd be able to read a description of it. So these are all ready to go, and I can just drop them in just like this. And I'm not going to add a caption here, so I'm just going to hit the return key and skip to the next line. And I'm going to add a heading. And you can see here there's this little shortcut. Type a slash to choose your block. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and let's slash, and then you can see we're given a little pop-up with options to add things that we need. And I'm going to type in, actually, let me show you how it works if I type in heading. So if you do slash and then start typing the name of the block, it brings that block up for you right there in line with the editor. So you don't actually have to go looking around for a plus sign or anything like that. This heading's a bit big, so I want to make it a level 3 heading. Headings, by the way, are the large text that separate different sections of text on websites. Well, also documents too, if you use like Microsoft Word or something like that. It's also a really great way to get large text in a hurry. So this we're going to use to add a bit of text here. And for this, we're going to pop in the text that I already have prepared here for cameras. I'm going to skip to the next line. And for this, I'm going to add some paragraph text. And like I mentioned, you don't actually need to look for a paragraph block. If you just drop to the next line, that's automatically the block that you get. So from here, I'm going to just go ahead and put in the text that I have for this section and hit my return key one more time. And next here, we could add a button, which is what we did for the call to action above. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do a simple text link. Because I want people to be able to go to this section or this page on the site, but I don't want a button necessarily. I don't want to scream for attention in that way, but it's a perfectly valid way to do it. And plenty of folks do like buttons. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it bold just so it stands out a bit. And then I'm going to add the link again. This is going to go to our cameras page. And just like that, we've set up the very first column here of our secondary call to action area. And the process for setting up the other two columns is exactly the same. To save a little bit of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our finished homepage, and I'm just going to actually copy and paste this content in here, which is just going to help us to move on to the next stage. There we go. And let me get that last column here so we can, oops, I didn't mean to click on that. Let's, oops. There we go. We're going to copy that, go back into our editor. We're going to paste that into our block here. There we go. So just like that, we've set out our columns. Obviously, I've cheated a little bit, and I've set up the two really fast here at the end. But this is exactly the same process as setting up the first one. So you're just going block by block, just adding the blocks you need until you have the layout that you're after here. And that's how you set up your secondary call to action section. Okay, we're really getting into the home stretch here. So we just have a few more things to add to our site, or to our homepage, excuse me. The first here is the recent blog post section. And to do that, we're going to use, again, we're going to use a spacer block and a heading block that's going to help define the section. And then we're going to add the blog post block. Just to mention, the blog post block is specific to WordPress.com. So this is not a block that you'll have available to you if you happen to have a WordPress site with another provider. But the good news is that there's another block called the query loop block. And you can use the query loop block in place of this one. It does exactly the same thing. Basically, it creates a feed of blog posts. So let's go ahead and set this up here. Again, what I'd like to do is click into the page area below, and let's go ahead and add our heading, or excuse me, our spacer. Let's start with our spacer first. I'm going to make this 50 pixels, so it's the same height as the other spacers we have on this page. And then let's go ahead and add a heading. And this is going to be from the blog. By default, it comes in left justified, so I would like to center this again, just for consistency. And then after that, I'm going to hit my return key, and we're going to add our next block. And for this, I'm just going to go ahead and use the inserter at the top. Again, you could use any of these options to add a block. I just kind of trying to show you them all. We're going to add the blog post block. There we go. So if I click on that and we scroll, you can see that right away, just adding this block and doing nothing else is exactly all you need. And it instantly starts putting in blog posts. And I've preset this a bit. I've actually published 3 blog posts to this site and got them all set up the way I want. So that makes this basically happen like magic. But if you add this block and nothing happens, it's probably because you haven't added any blog posts to your site yet. So just a reminder, it's a good idea to kind of set up all of your pages and your blog posts and everything you need first. And I kind of tend to do the home page actually after I've got all that stuff in place, just so I'm ready to link things to other pages and ready to build as I go. As with the other section above the columns, I would like this to be a bit bigger though. So let's adjust the width and let's set it for max width. That makes it the same width as the section above for some nice consistency here. But you can see these images are just really big, and they're actually so big, I would say that they fight for attention. They don't need to be this big. So what I'd like to do instead is just move them off to one side here. And you can see that this makes kind of a 2-column layout with the images on one side and the text on the other. And that's actually pretty good. I really like the way that this has turned out. It's really made things nice and compact again for us. Looking over here on the sidebar on the side, you can see that we have a few options. We could show more blog posts than just 3 blog posts. You could show 6 or 9 or 7 or 12 or however many you want. Again, I think that for your homepage, it's a good idea to to really have some restraint and not put everything in there. So we're just going to show 3 blog posts. Also, I mentioned that you have filters here, so you could filter by category. So if I took the time to add a category like featured to all of the blog posts, then I could type that word in here, type in featured, and that would automatically filter this so that all the blog posts you see here would just be blog posts that you want to feature instead. In this case, I think that the recent blog posts will be just fine. We'd like people to see that we're up to date and we have a lot going on here. So showing recent posts is a really great way to do that. You also have the option to turn off the featured image. I actually happen to like the featured image, so we're going to keep that there. Again, images on the home page is always a good thing. Let's set this also to stack on mobile. And to explain what this is, on a phone, you can imagine that this text and image beside each other will get really crowded and really small. So if you stack on mobile, what this means is that on a mobile phone, if I scroll down here to preview for you, you can see that the blog posts stack. And so the image now becomes on top of the text, followed by the next image, and so on and so forth. And this helps to kind of keep the layout looking good on a phone, but also make sure that it has the appearance that you'd like it to have when you're on your desktop. The last thing I'd like to do here is to turn off the author. I don't think we really need to show that here for this layout. It just adds a little bit of busyness that isn't really necessary. So we're going to go and get rid of that. And there we go. Now we've added our recent blog post section to our homepage. And now all that we have, oops, got too far with my trigger finger there. All we have left to do now is add a subscribe section. And you can add this to the bottom. And I know I see in the chat that this is going a little fast for people. And I do understand that. We are going to have a recording available, so you'll be able to slow down and watch it at your own pace. So I definitely understand that for some people it goes too fast, for other people it goes a little slow and covers knowledge they already have. But we will have a video available. Okay, so back to where we were. The subscribe section is going to use the spacer block, the heading block, the paragraph block, and then the subscribe block, which is going to be a new block that we're going to see here. Okay, so back to our page. We're going to click it again. We're going to click into the white area, which I like to do just when I know I'm moving on to something new, and I want to make sure I don't add blocks into the section above. And then I'm just going to go ahead and add my spacer. Same as before, I'm just going to make this 50 pixels. By the way, you don't have to drag it carefully. You can come over here to the sidebar and just type in 50. And that would be just fine as well. And then we're going to go ahead and add our heading. Oops. Here we go. And to that, I'm just going to go ahead and copy in the paste that I have, paste in the text that I have ready to go here. Same as the other sections, I'm going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to center it for consistency. And then I'm going to click on the block and hit my return key. And this is going to let me add a paragraph of text. In this case, I'm just going to add a single sentence, of course. Let's pop that in there. And although it looks fairly centered, it's actually just a little bit off. I know that you can, as a good thing to do is to click the center option here, just to make sure that it's actually centered and you don't get any surprises when you look at your homepage afterwards. And then the final block we're going to add is the subscribe block. I'm going to use the shortcut again. I'm going to type in /subscribe. And you can see the subscribe block is popping up in my list of options. We also have other blocks like MailChimp or Review, which are marketing platforms you can use to collect emails for marketing. We're going to use the subscribe functionality that's built into WordPress.com instead. And you can see that this has added a subscribe block. Really, there isn't anything else we need to do to configure this. What happens by default is if someone fills in their email address here, they get signed up to the site and they'll get basically a new blog post straight to their inbox. So there's nothing else for us to do here. I would like this section to stand out a little bit though. And so a really neat trick you can do is add a background color. And you can't add a black background color to each of the blocks individually, and that doesn't quite work out. So for example, not every block is going to have the option to set a background color. It looks like these ones all do, but not all do. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use my cursor, I'm going to drag, and I'm going to highlight my 3 blocks. And this new toolbar pops up with a few options. I'm going to choose this option here called group. And what this is going to do, this is going to group all of the blocks together inside of another block called the group block. Excuse me, I got a tickle in my throat here. And so once you've done this, this opens up a couple of interesting possibilities. Obviously, this makes this whole thing easier to move around. If I wanted to take this and put it somewhere else in the layout, making it a group means that I now have the ability to just move it up and down as a whole single unit. So I don't actually have to go through and move each block individually. But the real cool thing about this is that group block has the background color option. So by setting a background color for this, you can see we've already set it off. Excuse me. We've already set it off, so it sets it apart from the rest of the page. I'd like to make this a little bit more of a speed bump, though, so people don't scroll right past it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually make this also a wide width as well, so that it happens to be the same width as the section above it. And that's it. We have created our home page. So let's go ahead and publish. No surprises here. And once it's published, we're going to go ahead and view the page. And just like that, let me clear this banner out of the way so we have a little bit of space here. Oh, not working right now. So if you scroll down, you can see we have our primary call to action here, looking exactly like the example we started with. We have our secondary calls to action that's set up using our columns block. We have a section of recent blog posts. We're using the blog post block for this, but you could use the query loop block if you're using WordPress with another provider. It would have a similar appearance as well. And then finally, we have a section here down below to catch anyone before they get to the bottom of the page and see if they're willing to subscribe to us. Okay, so let's take a minute here to review what makes an effective homepage. As you see in the site that we've, or in the homepage that we've created, the area above the fold is where you get the most visitor attention. So to make a good first impression, it's really important to use this area to the fullest of your ability. And that includes making sure that it is aligned with the primary goal for your homepage. Make sure that this area that people see first is focused on the call to action that ties into your primary goal. Also, an effective homepage has eye-catching visuals that draw the visitor in. You may not be a graphic designer, so there's a chance that you're probably not going to be able to sit down and design yourself graphics that are going to work in this area. But everyone has the ability to add images, and I think that those really do an awful lot to make your homepage more interesting and compelling and help draw people in. So definitely make sure to use visuals or a lot of photos on your homepage, much more so than you would with other pages. Also, you want to make sure to stick to a layout that has easy to read text, that's not crowded. The layout doesn't have a lot of stuff in it. There's not a bunch of choice anxiety where someone lands on the homepage and isn't sure what to do next. If you've ever been to a grocery store and tried to pick a jar of pasta sauce out of the million of options that are there, you know what choice anxiety is. So a good homepage doesn't give you every option. It gives you 2 or 3 or 4 options to choose from. And those should be aligned with what your goals are for your site. And also, because you're not fitting everything into the homepage, because you're allowing this space for images, because you're focusing on keeping your text simpler and easier to digest, then what you're doing instead is you're encouraging people to go to the other pages of your site where they can find more information, they can explore. Hopefully they'll subscribe and come back to your site. Again, these are all things that make for an effective homepage. And that's the presentation. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate your attention today. I know that there's a lot of folks here who are asking about the replay. This is our first time doing this webinar, so I'm doing it live for the first time. There is not actually a recording of this, except for the one that we're doing right now. So as soon as we can, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get this recording available online. You know, we will have it on our YouTube channel by next week, but I'm going to bend over backwards to try and get it up there as quickly as I can. So again, I see that my colleagues have dropped a link to our YouTube channel into the chat. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel where we'll have this posted here as soon as we can. One last bit of business here before we get to the Q&A. I do want to mention that you're welcome to join us for future webinars. That's at WordPress.com/webinars. We're changing our format a little bit. So we're doing more of these live presentations like you have here today. And so we have another webinar that's on creating custom blog pages. which is something that's really useful if you happen to have a blog instead of a static website like a business might have or something like that. So we definitely recommend checking that out. Also, we'll be launching a new webinar every month, so definitely stay tuned. We'll be launching new content on a regular basis on that channel or on that page. Also, we'll be posting those videos on our YouTube channel as well. So you can subscribe to our YouTube and catch them that way if you can't attend live. Also, we have online courses available at WPcourses.com. These are companion to the webinars. They're free to attend, free to sign up for, excuse me, and they go at your own pace, so it's self-guided learning. It's a really great way to get a little better about using WordPress and doing it at your own pace. So go ahead and check out WPcourses.com. And that's all I have. So let's go ahead and get to the Q&A here. I know that my colleagues have been busily answering a bunch of these questions here for me. And I'm going to do my best here to try and answer some of these ones as well. So let's go ahead and start here. Let's start with Carol. Actually, before we get to your question, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into the dashboard of my site, just in case I can use it to demo anything that we talk about here. So this is the my home page or the home of my dashboard, the main dashboard page, and then you can see this is obviously for the site that we're working on right now. Okay, Carol asks, is a home page used for blogs as well as businesses? The answer is definitely yes. What I see often when you first start a WordPress site out of the box, your blog posts will show up on the homepage automatically. And that's what plenty of people do. They'll just start a blog and they'll start writing their blog posts, and the blog posts will show up on the homepage. I think I have another site that's just like that. So let me go to that one as well here. So I have this, this other site on my account, for example, which is also dedicated to photography because I love photography. And basically just blog posts appear here. This has a nice layout. This theme actually creates something that looks a little bit like a custom homepage, but this is just a feed of blog posts. But there's definitely plenty of use cases where you'd want to create a custom homepage and you have a blog. So this is an example of a site I have. This is a blog. In this case, this is a blog that's selling membership subscriptions, for example. So there's a call to action, just like we saw, but also I have just a recent section of blog posts. This is using a different layout, a slightly different layout, but using the same block to create that layout. And then a few other things as well. And I think a custom homepage works really well if you have a blog. It doesn't just have to be for a business site or a static kind of traditional website, if you will. Your homepage on a blog functions exactly the same way. It's going to be the place that a lot of people are going to land for the first time. So it's your chance to really show your best content, really put your featured blog posts out there, and make sure that they're in front of people and people are seeing your best content first. So setting up a homepage gives you a lot more control. And then, of course, on that homepage, you can just link to your blog where people can go and see the entire list of your blog posts that you have. Definitely recommend checking out our webinar on custom blog pages, which I believe we have one tomorrow. I think at this time or near this time. So go to WordPress.com/webinars and feel free to sign up for that one as well. We get into it in a lot more detail about customizing your site if you're using a blog instead. So I hope that helps. Tina asks, does the image have to be a certain size for it to be used on the homepage? The answer is no, but with a little asterisk at the end. So the answer is that if you upload an image to WordPress, WordPress is going to resize that image for you automatically. So it'll make all the sizes that you need. And if we go back here to our site, for example, I didn't really take any effort to resize my images. I just kind of dropped them in and they worked because I have a much larger version of this image, but WordPress just resized it for me to fit within this column. So there isn't a certain size that you need, but what I would recommend is that you want to make sure that you have a large enough size. The width of this home page right here is probably in the neighborhood of 1200 or 1400 pixels, which is basically as large as you'll ever need an image to be on your website for the most part. So make sure you upload an image that's large enough to use in this layout, to use full width. and then know that WordPress is going to take care of the rest of that for you. The problem I see people running into is they might choose a really small image, and then that can be a problem in the opposite. If you choose a small image, WordPress is going to try to display it really big on the layout wherever you happen to place it. But because it's really a tiny image, it's just going to blow it up. And that's going to be really pixelated and soft and out of focus, and it's just not going to look very good. So whenever possible, just make sure you're using an image that's at least about 1200 pixels or so. It doesn't have to be a super huge image. It doesn't have to be an image that's big enough to, print a full-size 16 by 20 to hang on your wall or anything like that. But you do want to make sure that it's kind of reasonably large size, and then let WordPress handle the rest for you. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Tina. Also, we're looking into doing a webinar just on images, so stay tuned for that at WordPress.com/webinars. And we're actually going to dig into that topic in a little bit more detail when we're able to. Okay, so now Sabrina asks, also, is this sample site available for us to view after the webinar? I don't actually have this one available to view. But what I would say is that it's really similar to a theme that we already offer here. And I'm going to search for it. It's called Heaver. Here it is, Heaver. And you can see that by default, this one's actually using a very similar layout to the one that we use. This one's set up a little bit differently because it doesn't, it uses the block editor, but it just is a slightly different theme than the one we're using here. So most everything you see here would apply to that as well. So you can refer to this site, and I'm going to go ahead and actually drop this link into our chat. So go ahead and check out that site and check out the demo there. Really very similar concept to what we've done here today. Okay, Sabrina asks again, is there a way to make the cover block look a bit more adjusted, like smaller with the words not being split up for mobile users? The answer is yes. Actually, there wasn't enough time to really dig into this in the full webinar, but let's go ahead and let's edit this page here. And let's talk a little bit about how we might do that. So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, I think what you mean is you're looking for a way to tighten up sort of the text that you have in here. As I mentioned already, by default, if you happen to be looking at it in a smaller device like a tablet, the text will adjust automatically, so there's no need to worry about that. But you can still have some control over it here in the desktop view. The first is if I click on the cover block itself, and then I scroll down here to the bottom of the options, here it is. There's a setting for padding. What padding is, think about it like a moving box. When you add padding inside of a box, it means that stuff can't go all the way to the edges of the box. Same thing here. So I can adjust the padding of this here, and this actually makes the text tighter by a little bit as well. But every block actually has this kind of setting. So if I click just here on my paragraph text itself and look under the dimension setting in the sidebar, I have an option here for padding as well. And margins. I'm going to try both of these actually, because I'm not sure which one is going to have the desired effect for me. But if I just move this padding, you can see that it really contains stuff in there. I don't think I like this one. I'll add a margin instead. No, margins sort of add space outside the box, so it pushes everything away from it. In this case, we do want padding, but I really don't want to have padding everywhere. I'd like to unlink this, and I'd just like to add padding to the right and to the left, and maybe down here at the bottom a little bit too. Let's try the bottom. There we go. Think of a little extra space from the button. So you do have options just with the blocks to be able to move things around. If you wanted to constrain this text even further, I would actually go as far as add a column block in here and leave the left column and the right column empty and just put my text in the middle. So there's plenty of ways that you can approach it. Most of the blocks are there to help you build that. If you're ever feeling stuck and you have your site on WordPress.com, you can reach out to us at WordPress.com help, WordPress.com/help, excuse me, and we'd be able to help walk you through that as well. So I hope that helps answer your question. There's a really lot of functionality in blocks. It's really interesting to just take the time to play around with the settings and options and see what's in there. So this is one place where there's a lot of options that we couldn't touch on in this webinar, but definitely help. Okay, Jameson asks, is using a color other than white for your homepage okay? Or does it seem amateurish or otherwise detract from the site? I've noticed that very few web pages bother with any color aside from pure white. Web pages, you know, it's a lot like fashion. It's a lot like, you know, the clothing you see, where styles change over time, and, you know, what used to be in vogue before isn't anymore. That's kind of what you're seeing right there. Actually, there's really a big trend, I would say, in websites in general, to have more of a kind of an open, very minimalist look that focuses on your text and images. The nice thing about a white background is it really puts all of the attention on your text and your images, because those are really the only things to see. Excuse me. But you could actually change the background color of this page. It's done in a few different ways depending on your theme. And on this theme, I'm going to leave this page here. I'm going to go into the My Sites view. And what I'm looking for here under Appearance is our site editor. This site uses what's called full site editing, which means that you can adjust the templates that pages are built off of just as easily as you can adjust pages themselves. Everything is built with blocks, essentially. So you can see up here, for example, my logo is a block, my text is a block, and I could, of course, change that if I wanted to as well. But up here on the right-hand side, we have this option for styles. So if I click on that, I get a little welcome message, but I know how this works already, so I'll skip that. You have a couple different options that are site-wide. In this case, I'd like to change the color of my site for every page on the site, and I'd like to set a different background color. Let's choose blue. And you can see this has made the background blue. It's a little tricky. You can see my logo isn't cut out, so I have a white edges to my logo. So it would make sense to actually use a logo that's cut out if you have a logo, for example. I don't have to stick with this color either. I can go ahead and click on this swatch here, and it gives me the option to sort of play around with its tone and its color. Let's go like that. It's a little slow because I'm sharing my screen and doing a bunch of stuff here with my network to make this webinar happen. This is much slicker when you do it yourself, but you can drag this around and see the changes update on the site in real time. You can even tweak the color spectrum if you want and choose something that's more purple or plum or something like that. You can go with a really light pink, for example. And you can see that this basically just adds a background to your site. It's a matter of personal taste. If you want to have a background for your site, it's your site, go for it. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's plenty of great sites that have background colors. So yeah, it's definitely an option. I just chose for this webinar to keep it in an all white background, primarily just because I come from the world of photography and we like having white gallery walls that we put photos on. So I like having white backgrounds. That's just me. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Jameson. Next question here is from Gabriella, who asks, how can you change the order of the secondary call to action images? Let's play around with that, actually. I believe you can just drag the columns around. I haven't actually done it, though. I have to admit, this is the cool thing about the block editor is it has so much functionality in it that you can almost never get to all of it. It's really more about finding the tools and the approach that works for you. Let's go down here to our columns. And what I'm going to do, this makes it a lot easier, by the way, when you're navigating. This page already has a ton of blocks on it. And it's really hard to know where to start. And if I click, well, then yeah, I've clicked on a single block, but I'd really like to grab a whole column. What you can do is you can expand the list view here, and that gives you access to actually all of the blocks themselves. And then from here, what I can do is I can just drag and drop. So if I take that column and switch it around, you can see that we've swapped those two right off the bat. I can go ahead and drag this one up here and swap that around as well. And it isn't just limited to swapping columns inside the columns block. If I wanted to, I could put the columns below the blog posts. And now you can see that if I scroll down here, I've done just that. I've basically just dragged and dropped them down to that area. So yeah, absolutely. That's totally possible to do. Generally, because it's a block, it's just a matter of rearranging the blocks. So I hope that answers your question, shows you a cool little trick. This sidebar here, I highly recommend using it when you're actually working within the, an existing page, a page that already has a ton of blocks in it. Really helps give you a roadmap to where everything is in that view. Okay, we have another one here from Anonymous who asks, I don't want my old blog post to show up on the web page. How can I fix this? I think that actually, so when you say old blog pages, I have a couple questions. So probably the first thing I would say is we might need to take a look at your site and kind of get a better idea of what's going on with that one. But it can be the case if you have old blog posts that are staying up there and they won't get out of the view. Generally, when you publish a blog post, the new blog post shows up at the top and it pushes all the other blog posts down below it. And that's the expected behavior. But if you have old blog posts that are staying stuck up there to the top, then probably what they are is they've been set to an option called sticky. I actually can show you that here at WordPress.com/support. If you type in sticky, if I love typing when I've got someone watching over my shoulder because I always type it incorrectly. Here we go. And so this is actually a setting, and I want you to go ahead and find this when you're on your site, is look through your blog posts and look here for a section. Let me find where it is here in this document. Here we go. So there's settings in the sidebar on the right that allow you to take a blog post and stick it to the top. In the old days, this would be a great way to like make an intro blog post and make sure that it stays way up at the top so it's the first thing people see. Or if you have a featured blog post, something that's really important to you, you can do it that way too. But just go through and make sure you don't have any of your blog posts set as stickies. That's the #1 reason why you see old blog posts at the top, even though they have no reason to be there. So I hope that answers your question. Again, we might need to take a look at your site. So feel free to reach out at WordPress.com/help and we'll take a look at it there. Okay. I think I just have time for 1 or 2 more questions. We're just now at the top of the hour here. So I'm going to get this question here from Awal. I hope I got that correctly, Awal, who asks, I want to put an animation of pictures on my blog. How should I do it? Animation could be many different things. The most common one that I see is what we call a carousel or a slider. I don't know if I have one handy to show you. Let me see if I can go to, here we go. We call this the post carousel block. And what it does is it adds let me see if they've embedded one here into the page. Sorry, I know this is a lot of scrolling. This is not very good TV, what I'm doing right now. But this would add a block to the page that basically has slides in it, and it has arrows that you can control, and also has autoplay, so the slides play automatically. And it's not just any slideshow. What it does is it actually links to other blog posts or pages in your site. So that's one way to add animation. You often see with other themes that there's a lot of animation built into home pages. This is really in vogue lately, and it's really popular to have all kinds of animated effects where things pop in from the outside or scroll up from the bottom or change in front of you. Those are typically built into themes. There really isn't an easy way to animate an image other than the technique I used where we kind of had a fixed background and it scrolls as you scroll, or adding a carousel are the easiest ones that you can add yourself. Typically other kinds of animations like scrolling effects and parallax animations and things like that, those tend to be built into the theme. So for a lot of those, you might need to choose a theme that has that built in. But I think a carousel block and also the call to action we set up with a fixed image is a really good way to go too. One thing I do want to say, and this is sort of a warning to everyone out there, home pages with lots of animation on them are really slow to load. This is a problem because if a page is slow to load, then Google's less likely to index it and show it in search results. And also for people who are coming to your site, if they're on a slow internet connection or using an older computer or anything like that, it'll either be slow to load or it'll act really buggy. It won't really be a very smooth experience. So I would say that generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, it's okay to add like a single animation to a home page, maybe 2 if you're feeling brave. But the current vogue these days of having really long one-page websites where you scroll and scroll and scroll and each new section has some new animation that's happening, that's a lot of really exciting stuff, and it's really attractive to people who are setting up a site and want to make sure it looks professional and has a lot of impact. But they have kind of a downside to them as well. So as with everything in this webinar, I definitely recommend restraint. It's okay to have a little bit of animation, but just remember that you might be hurting yourself with Google and with other people who are visiting your site if you're really loading it down with animation. Okay, so I hope that helps. We are here at the top of the hour, so unfortunately I can't get to the rest of these questions. I believe that my colleagues are going through and answering those via text. So thank you for that. One last thing I want to say here before we go is that we're going to be launching new webinars every month. And so we'll expect a new webinar next month again. And we'll keep rolling more updated content as we go through here. This is a bit of an experiment today. This is our first time doing a fully live webinar like this. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's been really helpful for you. I know it's been fun for me to do here on my end. So we encourage you to come check out more webinars at WordPress.com/webinars or check out one of our courses at WPcourses.com. One last thing, I'm going to turn off my microphone and my camera, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to leave this presentation open for about 5 more minutes. So anyone who needs to copy any links or any information out, you can go ahead and do that. It's currently a limitation of Zoom that you can't actually copy and paste, which is really frustrating. But if you have a link that you want to save, what I recommend is clicking on that link inside of the chat or inside of the Q&A and going to that web page and then bookmarking it the way that you normally do. Again, that's not something we can control. Zoom, unfortunately, just doesn't let you copy and paste, which I think is so weird in this modern era. But there you go. Anyway, so I'm going to turn off my microphone and my camera. I'm going to leave things open for a little bit. But thank you very much for attending, and I really hope to see you all at the next webinar. Thank you again.